border. Shout out to B Souls because he made a video about this. Wiggins is on the border of being a bust.
But no, cause stop, don't do that.
No, because people don't want to admit it. But the problem is that Wiggins is the worst. He's the second worst first round pick in the last 10 years. There is something that's extremely interesting about the NBA and its community. We all understand that basketball is a team sport. However, we tend to give way too much credit to some of the star athletes on the teams. Now, don't get me wrong, and I'm not in denial, the NBA is definitely a star-driven league, and you give yourself a much better chance of winning a championship if you have one of the better players in the NBA during that time period. But still, there are multiple times throughout NBA history where the star athlete or the best players on the roster underperformed, and we still gave that player way more credit than he actually deserved. So in this video, what I decided to do is break the cycle and shed some light on some of the role players over the last 15 to 20 years that have really aided players' legacies in their careers. And I would go as far as saying end up saving them, because a lot of players have vastly underperformed and we don't talk about it simply because the team ended up winning. So with that being said, my name is Legend of Winning, aka Low, and let's get right into the video. Ron Artest saves Kobe Bryant. The 2009-2010 season was very pivotal in Kobe Bryant's career. As we now know, this is the last championship that he would go on to win, which meant that he had 5 championships in total. Enough to significantly close a gap between him and Michael Jordan when it comes to championships, while also separating a gap between him, Shaquille O'Neal, in the early stages of his career, defining him more as an individual and also bringing another championship to the Los Angeles Lakers, as we all know. And speaking of the Los Angeles Lakers, they knew that they had to add a little bit more pieces on the roster to keep up with the Boston Celtics, as they had lost to them in the 2008 NBA Finals, which thus brings us to the addition of Ron Artest after losing Trevor Ariza. During this time, Ron Artest was nowhere near the same player that he once was, so I definitely feel comfortable with calling him a role player. But during the 2010 postseason, there were multiple moments where Ron Artest actually stepped up. A great example of this is the Western Conference Finals, as the Los Angeles Lakers matched up with the Phoenix Suns. And despite the fact that Kobe Bryant had a 40-point outing, the game still came down to a buzzer beater, as Ron Artest made some pretty questionable decisions in the previous possessions, which just leads us to the inbound pass to Kobe Bryant, a crazy shot attempt from Mr. 24, and an air ball. However, to save Kobe Bryant in the embarrassment of airballing a potential game winner, Ron Artest grabs the offensive rebound, put the shot back up before the buzzer sounds off, and thus they will go on to win Game 5 and eventually win the entire series. But that's not where his heroics ends. In Game 7 of the 2010 NBA Finals, it's very well documented that Kobe Bryant performed poorly from the field. Kobe would end that game with a 23-point performance, however shooting 25% from the field and 0 for 6 from behind the arc. Regardless of how many rebounds he grabbed, that's just completely unacceptable. Now, to be fair to Kobe, no one in that entire game really performed that well, as both teams struggled pretty consistently throughout the entire game. But as the game continued to progress, the Boston Celtics attempted to build on their lead, but great performance and timely baskets from players such as Dirk and Pau Gasol made sure that the lead was never out of control and the Los Angeles Lakers were always in striking distance. And just like that, on cue, deep in the fourth quarter, Ron Artest started to come alive, making defensive plays and some very pivotal shots in the fourth quarter, basically cementing the lead that the Los Angeles Lakers took from the Boston Celtics. Also with his 20-point performance, Ron Artest recorded 5 rebounds and 5 steals. So I do believe it's a very interesting question. If it wasn't for Ron Artest, would Kobe Bryant have his 5th ring? Robert Horry saves Tim Duncan. Now, when it comes to Robert Horry, I definitely don't believe I have to do that much convincing when I say Robert Horry is by far one of the more clutch performers throughout NBA history. But there is one performance in his catalog that I believe that a lot of people overlook, and that is the 2005 NBA Finals. During the 2005 Finals, the Detroit Pistons matched up with the San Antonio Spurs, two teams that were built off the identity of being defensive juggernauts. So getting some shots off was going to be a massive task for both teams, regardless of the great players that they had on their roster. And this was definitely true when you look at Tim Duncan and his underperformance throughout the entire series. A great example of this is Game 5. As the two defensive juggernauts continued to slug it out as the game continued to progress, When the fourth quarter came around, offensively, there was nothing that neither one of the teams could do. During the last 12 minutes of regulation, Tim Duncan scored 7 points while recording 6 rebounds. However, he shot 3 for 7 from the field and converted only 1 of his 7 free throws. The only reason why the San Antonio Spurs were able to stay alive during this series is because of the heroics from Robert Horry in Game 5. Because in the fourth quarter of Game 5, while everyone was struggling from the field, Robert Horry was on fire. 13 points in the fourth quarter, 4 for 5 from the field, 3 for 4 from behind the arc, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the free throw line. However, it doesn't stop there, because in Game 5, regulation just wasn't enough time to determine who was going to be a winner, so thus that brings us to overtime. And in overtime, the struggles offensively continued for both teams. But don't worry, Robert Horry stepped up big in overtime as he recorded 5 points in overtime, which led both teams. And out of those 5 points that he scored, 3 of them was from a very crucial 3-point shot that he made that basically sealed away the game. The San Antonio Spurs are going to win Game 5, and then when you fast forward to Game 7, yet again, Tim Duncan really didn't perform that well. Now, Tim Duncan did record 25 points along with grab 3 rebounds, 3 assists. However, the 5 turnovers and the 37% from the field doesn't bode too well if you want to make an argument for being one of the greatest of all time. But again, Robert Horry stepped up in a huge way, scoring 15 points, grabbing 5 rebounds, shooting 57% from the field and 50% from behind the arc, while shooting 5 for 6 from the free throw line. And when you start to consider that this is a team that was taken to a Game 7 by a Detroit Pistons team that it seems like there's not even a single Hall of Famer on that roster, I definitely believe it would have done a lot of damage to Tim Duncan's career, especially when you consider how poorly he performed during that series if they end up losing to the Detroit Pistons. Jason Terry saves Dirk Nowitzki. During the 2000s, Dirk Nowitzki won an MVP, had a finals appearance, and was by far one of the most dynamic, efficient scorers in the NBA. But there was one thing that nearly escaped the grasp of his legacy, and that is a championship. However, as we all know, in 2011, that's when everything changed. The Miami Heat matched up with the Dallas Mavericks for the second time, and even though, yes, there was some familiar faces, the Miami Heat were completely different. They added Chris Bosh and LeBron James in the offseason, and they were overwhelmingly the favorite. But as we all know, the underdogs prevailed, and the Dallas Mavericks were going to win the championship, and Dirk Nowitzki would eventually win Finals MVP. But I do believe a lot of people tend to forget how poorly Dirk shot from the field, because a lot of people get more concerned about the underperformance of LeBron rather than a lot of missed opportunities from Dirk. At the end of the series, Dirk Nowitzki averaged 27 points, nearly 10 rebounds. However, he shot under 42% from the field and 37% from behind the arc, which his 3-point percentage was really good, and so was his free throw percentage, 97, almost 98%. However, the unsung hero for Dirk Nowitzki in his career is Jason Terry. Jason Terry would finish that series averaging 18 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, on shooting splits that are amazing, nearly 50% from the field, almost 40% from behind the arc, and 75% from the free throw line. But more importantly, more specifically, there are definitely moments throughout that series where Dirk Nowitzki seems as if he was about to drop the ball, but Jason Terry was not allowing that to happen. A great example of this is Game 6, the final game of the series, in which Dirk Nowitzki, he did record 21 points, grabbed 11 rebounds, 2 steals. However, and this is very uncharacteristic of Dirk Nowitzki, shot extremely poorly from the field. 33% from the field, 1 for 7 from behind the arc, and only got to the free throw line 2 times. If it wasn't for the 27-point performance from Jason Terry coming off of the bench while shooting nearly 69% from the field and almost 43% from behind the arc, there's a very legitimate argument if it wasn't for Jason Terry, Dirk Nowitzki might not have ever won his one and only championship. Ray Allen saves LeBron James. Now, I'm pretty sure this is extremely obvious. The 2013 NBA Finals, which was the matchup against the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us are extremely familiar with the story, but here's a quick recap. The Miami Heat were 3 years into their 4-year experiment. And even though, yes, LeBron won his first championship, a lot of people still had thoughts of the 2011 NBA Finals, in which LeBron vastly underperformed. And so going into the 2013 NBA Finals matched up against the San Antonio Spurs, it was definitely going to be one of the better NBA Finals we had ever seen, and it came down to a Game 7 in which Miami would eventually go on to win. But there's still one moment that many people still cling on to, and that is Game 6 of the NBA Finals, the fourth quarter, the Ray Allen corner 3. Leading up into that shot, LeBron in the first 3 quarters of Game 6, he was terrible. Like, I'm not even trying to sugarcoat it. He just wasn't performing that well at all. Consistently turning over the ball, not shooting well from the field, but then as soon as the fourth quarter clicked, his headband flew off, LeBron was unleashed, and he was putting up some ridiculous scoring numbers, and it seemed as if he was completely unstoppable. But then the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter hit, and LeBron just started to make some very questionable decisions. In the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter of Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals, LeBron, he scored 5 points. However, he shot 40% from the field, 1 for 3 from behind the arc, and did not get to the free throw line whatsoever. What's even more important though is that he recorded 3 turnovers, 2 of which were on back-to-back possessions. And going back to the 3-pointers that he attempted, in which he only was able to convert 1 of 3, the last 3-pointer that he missed just so happened to bounce correctly off of the rim, so Chris Bosh can grab the rebound, kick it out to Ray Allen, and Ray Allen arguably made the greatest shot in NBA history. The reason why that shot is so important to LeBron's legacy is because in the next season, the Miami Heat were not the same. The consistent deep runs to the finals left the team mentally and physically fatigued, and in the next season, they just were not the same as they were blown off the floor by the San Antonio Spurs, which means that LeBron was only able to receive 2 championships in his 4 years in Miami. But if Ray Allen didn't make that shot, we're talking about LeBron leaving the Miami Heat after 4 years, making the finals all 4 years, however only winning 1 championship. So there you go, people. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, give me some ideas of other role players that save other great players' legacies. I would definitely like to hear that in the comment section as well. And hit that notification bell, because I'll see you all next time. Peace.